expertise in geriatrics. And although the county puts out an extensive list of senior services, there's no good list that's universally found for people who have specialties in geriatric medicine. Do you have any plans to produce such an item?
I do now. and we'll work on getting a list out that has that, and updating our web pages and getting some brochures out as well. So we'll work on that.
And apparently there's a real focus needed in psychiatric types of services.
That's an understatement. Yes, psych services on a national level is really kind of in a crisis mode. Very underfunded, growing needs, and everybody in the state's kind of getting out of those the psych world. And so Pueblo's closed down their program. A lot of the hospitals down in Denver, and so we really do struggle through Mountain Crest and some of our other programs. We really do want to meet the needs of Northern Colorado. Unfortunately, what we're meeting the needs of is really the state of Colorado, because we're one of the last standing that's providing a lot of the intensive psych services that are needed. And so being a private not-for-profit community hospital, we don't just get to say, no, we're only going to see patients from the Northern Colorado region. So we're often filling up our beds and our services with patients from Grand Junction and Pueblo and all over the state. And so we're working with the state legislators to try to see if there's a solution here, because we're more than willing to provide the services, but we're going to need some help, and it's going to take a lot of effort and more funding than currently goes into those services to make it work. We're committed to providing those services. It is a strong community need and something that we don't have any intention of getting out of, although it does cost the health system somewhere around $5 million a year just to run Mountain Crest on an annual basis. And so there's a lot of work to be done in that area, and we intend on continuing to be a provider in those areas, but we are going to need some help, and we need to figure out a statewide solution for this.
I have about a half a dozen cards here directed at each of your agencies in one form or another that has to do with the planning documents that you've made public, and few, if any, have specifically cited your attention to seniors and senior issues, and specifically some things such as the city's economic health strategic plan, and some others totally eliminated any attention to seniors. Do you believe after today's meeting that you might reevaluate your approach in the future and address the significant needs of seniors when doing continuous strategic plans?
Well, I want to speak to it before Kevin does, yes. I do have to say, and my comments are here. When I began, one of the things that I talked about, and by the way, you can't say a whole lot in 5 minutes, and so I wish we each had a lot more to share, a lot more time to share. But one of the things that I talked about is sort of a systemic look at how we engage our citizenry and the various groups within Fort Collins. And I just think, and I believe the council believes this, that we need to do a better job at that, and we need to better understand the priorities. And I think this city organization and our elected leaders do a fantastic job at it, but we absolutely have to get better. So for me, what's really great about being invited to participate on these kinds of discussions is you also have to take the time to go research and learn what your organization is doing. And beyond what I hear, what the normal sort of conversations are, what's the senior, what are the senior center staff doing, and what's the senior advisory board doing, but really, how do we, as a city organization, my 2,000 colleagues with the elected leadership that we have, how do we through these discussions, learn about what the needs are. And so earlier, right before this meeting, I met with a group we call Leadership Link in the city. There's about 60 mid-level managers in that organization. I'm sorry, on that team. And I just, I only had a couple minutes, but I shared with that team my experience about preparing for this discussion. And so these are utility directors, and they're, water and finance and HR and all around our organization, mid-level managers. And so I think that by being involved in these kinds of conversations, it certainly makes us as leaders more aware as well. And so if we don't take this and go back and lead our organizations with this experience, then why are we here? Why are we having these conversations? So I guess I'll answer more directly. The awareness just that I've gained over the last few weeks in preparing for this conversation, and then hearing questions and running into people before this, I think it'll have an impact on me as a leader in the city organization. I can speak for me as one, but I also have a council who's aware of these issues, that are very, very willing to learn and hear and engage. And then, we all talk about limited resources, but your city organization, through your fees, taxes, fines, and charges, you give us $500 million a year and 2,000 employees to deliver these services. So we do have resources to impact change. So anyway, I'll get off my little platform here, but I've learned a lot. I appreciate it. I want to start getting better at this, and I promise you that I'll lead our organization in that way.
Just as a side note, we obviously have more questions than we can ask tonight or get answered. So we've tried to compile the questions from several sources. But what we will do as a committee is to put these questions to the panelists and include that in the report that you'll all be receiving by email. So make sure that we have your email address. I think we have time for maybe one or two more.
Barbara, I think Mr. Gluckman wanted to answer the last question.
Oh, good, please.
Well, just a couple of things. I don't want to sound too defensive, but one of the things I thought about is, in order... It wasn't me. Sometimes in order to really understand your job, you really have to have the direct experience of, in this case, you have to have the direct experience of getting old in order to know what it's like and what you need and what you want. And this might sound like kind of peculiar, but in Laramie County, and I'm sure this is all over for workforce issues, people that wanted to retire over the past couple of years have not retired in our organization. So we have a lot of workers, both in management as well as all across the whole spectrum, who are 65 plus. And having that as part of our leadership team, having it, as I said, across the whole organization of Laramie County, has really helped us understand what the needs are, not only in the organization in terms of internal, but external as well. So that has been really, actually very positive. I know that the people that want to retire probably don't think it was very positive, but it has been positive for the organization. The other thing I want to say is, because we do operate the Office on Aging, and I believe they do a strategic plan every couple of years, and they do that through a survey, as well as doing some outreach right here in the community throughout Laramie County, where we do work sessions to find out the needs of our seniors. So hopefully we're doing a good job, and I know that our strategic plan is out there. One other thing that I didn't kind of touch on before is employment. Employment is another big issue for seniors, and our Workforce Center does a very good job in specifically targeting senior employment. And in fact, next week, I think it's the 9th or the 11th, but if you go onto our website, Laramie County, we have a workshop devoted for seniors and employment opportunities. So if you're looking for employment, or if it's something that you think that you would want for the future, we do have workshops for employment opportunities. So thank you.
I have a question about employment. Many of the questions that were turned in dealt with people who may not be able to retire but need to continue working but may not want to work on a full-time basis or are able to work on a full-time basis. As being the major organizations in our region, do your organizations have processes in place where you support people having graduated retirements or are able to work longer, either on a part-time basis or on a temporary basis of some sort, so that they can stay out of the poverty rolls?
Yeah, I mean, I already,
There's
you know, I already said anyway that, you know, we don't do any forced retirement, and as I said, we have a lot of people that are 65 plus in our organization. And I wanted to get this one thing right, since you mentioned employment. It's March 9th, and it's called Boomers and Beyond. And it's an all-day workshop for seniors, and it is for employment opportunities. So if you go to our website, please do register. I believe it's free. If it's not, see Darren. And hopefully, you know, few of you will partake in that opportunity.
And then within Poudre Valley Health System, we've had to work very hard to get creative on part-time employment, 0.25 quarter-time employment, and look at a lot of different options and initiatives. We have found that within our organization, we traditionally, you know, we have service awards that we celebrate, and about every month we have new 30, 35, 40, 45-year employees that have been working with us over those years, celebrating their anniversaries. We certainly don't kick anybody out of the workforce, and so it is a demanding. If you're a physical caretaker on the units, it takes a toll, and so, you know, we're looking at ways that we can minimize some of the lifting and the stretching and the grabbing, and we're always looking at the ergonomic components of it. But yeah, we're always looking for ways that we can utilize the talent that's in the city to our benefit. And then the organization absolutely runs on volunteerism. And if you've been in Poudre Valley Hospital, you've seen all the purple coats around, and the individuals that give their time to us really allow us to keep up and running, and we appreciate all the volunteerism that takes place within the organization as well.
And I would just say at the city, I would call it sort of non-traditional working relationships with our coworkers. So as I think it was maybe Neil mentioned, that a number of people who had planned on retiring because of the economy and the performance of their retirement portfolio, their investments, they've had to delay those. So we are, I don't think we're great at it yet, but we are having very non-traditionally sort of oriented relationships with our employees. I think for a couple of reasons. One is because I think great employers do that. And second of all, because this idea of knowledge transfer, when someone, by the way, we have someone who's worked for the city for 47 years, and she's highly productive and deeply, deeply committed to this community and her position, and with multiple people with 40 plus years worth of experience. And so how do you know, if they come in and give 2 weeks notice that they're leaving, that's traumatic on an organization. And when you have many, many people with that kind of commitment to this organization, this issue of knowledge transfer matters a lot. So how do we allow them to transfer the knowledge to younger people coming into the workforce? We get that experience, but then we're also respecting their deep commitment for those past 4 decades or 3 decades to this city. So again, I don't think we're great at it, but I think we're working really, really hard to create these non-traditional relationships. It is a challenge for major employers in town, I assure you. It's not only for the city of Fort Collins.
We also have several questions dealing with housing, and one of the most commonly asked questions has to do with the apparent conflict between ordinances and rules that are created by the government due to university students in housing in the community. which impacts the opportunities, choices, or options that older, probably senior, single-type people have in terms of creating housing for themselves as they go through the aging process. Specifically, by limiting the number of unrelated people living in a dwelling in Fort Collins, makes it hard for seniors who might opt for co-housing. Also, there was a mention of the opportunity to have, you know, like the small back houses or alley houses to help house older family members or things like that. And has the university, the city, and the county ever sat down and thought about ways in which they could mitigate some of these circumstances?
Well, let me start, because I think that governmental entity you're talking about is probably the guy with the microphone right here. You know, what you're suggesting is that we worked hard to fix a particular problem, but when you fix a problem, you can squeeze out other sort of problems as well. And I do have to say, and Mayor, you may have heard differently, but this is the first time I've heard that there's a concern about the impact of the occupancy ordinance on seniors. So, and if many of you have shared that, I've not heard that. So that's a new one. I will say that we were trying to solve a problem, a long-standing problem between over-occupied units. And it's not directed only at Colorado State students. It's directed at over-occupied units in the community. So I wasn't aware of that. I will tell you that one of the things that we have to be very careful of is not to discriminate against certain classes. So for example, we can't say we're going to do this because we have student occupation or occupying units, and then make some exceptions for seniors. You have to treat all categories of renters the same, and we have to be very, very careful about that. If that is actually, and it's been asked, so sounds like it is an issue. Maybe that's something that we can talk more about. But we need to treat people similarly, student, senior, and I think what we've heard about the occupancy ordinance, although there's a lot of consternation on the campus and on Front Range and Colorado State both, that what neighbors are telling us is that ordinance has been effective at beginning to really bring back some quality to neighborhoods which have seen serious disruption because of the constant turnover and over-occupying in neighborhoods. So thanks for the comment. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, just one quick comment on a very, very different spin on the housing issue, but it's on my mind because it's come up in just the last week about 3 times. We've had in every case, it's been someone who would be 60 and above interested in donating rental property to the community foundation to create a fund that would fund various charitable causes. So I just mentioned that as something that, again, on this opportunity side, we're really seeing an increasing number of seniors who have owned real estate in this community for many, many years, investment real estate, and they see this as a good time. The market's up, particularly for investment properties, and they are donating those to create funds that fund charitable causes. So I know that's maybe stretching the housing issue there, but I just wanted to put a plug in for that concept.
I think we have time for one more question.
No, I think we'll need to go ahead and move on now. So again, we couldn't get to all the questions, but we will type up all the questions that we got. If you have more questions that come up, you can still put them on the index card and